Okay, guys, we're back. We're back. We're talking about the names of God today. And today, this name is one I'm so thankful for. God is Jehovah Shalom. He is the God of peace. Now, Jehovah Shalom is actually translated 170 times in the Bible as peace. It means not just tranquility, but it means whole. It means finished. It's fulfilled. It's perfected. And it's kind of more of a title than just a name, but we can appropriately apply this to God for sure. We're meant to know the fullness of God's peace. We're meant to live in and experience His shalom. In fact, it's supposed to be in us so much so that other people experience it when they're around us. It should be one of those marks of a Christian, one of those marks of a disciple is, man, they're just at peace. They're not anxious. I mean, there's a reason why God calls us not to worry. It's because when we worry, we're denying the presence of God's peace in our life. It comes to us in the first place. It's used in Judges chapter 6. Now, Judges is one of my favorite books ever. It's like the superhero comic book action adventure movie book of the Bible. If you want to read an action-packed book, the book of Judges is a great place to start. But the story of Gideon is, for a long time, been one of my favorites. And I've taught these stories for a long time, but I relate to Gideon. Here you have a guy who has spent his whole life kind of beat up by the Midianites, and he is afraid of them. The whole country is afraid of them. They've been under oppression. They've been under rule. I mean, it's just been a bad place. And here we find Gideon. He's in a wine press trying to sift this wheat and chaff and just so he can make bread. But the wine press is the exact opposite of the place where you normally do that. So it's just everything's so counterintuitive. And God speaks to Gideon. He calls him a mighty warrior. And Gideon's like, what? You talking to me? And so there's a process that God uses to call Gideon into his being, into his calling, so he can rise up and become one of the great judges of Israel, one of the great warriors in the history of the nation. And in this, Gideon has to come to trust the Lord. And so whenever you read Judges 16 or chapter 6, verse 16, it says this, the Lord answered, and this is where the peace comes from. I will be with you. I'll strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive. Gideon really didn't know what to do with that. But verse 17 says this, Gideon is talking back to the Lord. If now I found favor in your eyes, give me a sign that you're really talking to me. Please do not go away until I come back and bring an offering and set it before you. And the Lord said, I'll wait until you return. So Gideon's famous for wanting these signs. I mean, he just was so full of doubt. I mean, I can relate to that. I don't know if you can, but I can relate to that. So he was asking for a very specific sign. It says, Gideon went inside, he prepared a young goat, and from an ephah of flour, he made bread without yeast, putting the meat in a basket and its broth in a pot. He brought them out and offered them to him under the oak tree. So he's sitting under this oak tree. He's brought out this sacrifice, this meal to offer to the Lord. And the angel of God said, take the meat and the unleavened bread and place them on the rock and pour out the broth. And so Gideon did that. He's being obedient and he's wanting to see what God will do. It says, then the angel of the Lord touched the meat and the unleavened bread with the tip of his staff that was in his hand, and fire flared on the rock, consuming the meat and the bread. And the angel of the Lord disappeared. And so this is a whole goat. I mean, this is a lot of meat. This is a lot of bread. There's a whole feast there. Gideon is saying, I need to see something that's going to let me know for sure this is you, Lord. And so he brought it and he put it out there, poured out the broth, and boom, just like that, the fire came and it was gone. It says when Gideon realized that it was the angel of the Lord, when his doubts had been erased because of the work of God in an obvious fashion, he exclaimed, alas, sovereign Lord, I've seen the angel of the Lord face to face. But the Lord said to him, and so all this happens. He's finally got Gideon's attention. And what does the Lord say? Peace. Do not be afraid. You're not going to die. Most of the time throughout Scripture, when God gives us command to have peace, the reason why we have peace is because God is with us. That's what started with Gideon. God made this promise, I'm going to be with you. And so that's why right here in verse 24, Gideon built an altar there. And they say that altar still stands today. And he called it, the Lord is peace. Jehovah Shalom. Kind of a crazy way to kind of get about it, but you know the story of Gideon if you followed it all. In fact, if you haven't, go read the story of Gideon today. Jump into Judges, start there in chapter 6, and just keep following along. And what you see is God did some crazy things. He took he took Israel against the Midianites, already outnumbered. The Midianites have this huge, powerful army. Gideon, gathers all these troops, and God cuts them down. He has them drink from a stream, and then some guys they're scared. They get to go home. He has them drink from a stream. Finally, it's down to 300 people, and instead of arming them with Uzis and machine guns and bazookas, he says, "Get a torch and get a pot and get a lyre." He basically sends the marching band to take out the opposing army, and they did. Go read the story. It's amazing. God's promise of peace was with him. They won the battle. Peace was brought to Israel for decades. And it's because God was with them. But there's also another component to that. A lot of us, we forget that our role in this, and sometimes we don't see it in the story. It's that we have to believe that the God who promised to never leave us or forsake us didn't. We have to trust that this God who says, "I'm going to bring you peace," is with us, and he gives us what we need to make it through. If we can do that, then God can do great things. And so today, think about the peace of God, Jehovah Shalom. Take some time to write about it and pray about it, and just thank God for everything he's done, and invite him into your situation. Maybe you're in a rough place and you need some peace. Start thanking God for providing it. Look for the ways that God has been present, and be open